I met Sara in college, back when life seemed so much simpler. She was all sunshine and soft laughter, with that habit of tucking her hair behind her ear whenever she was nervous. We got married 5 years ago, just before I landed a job that required me to travel more than I would have liked. I thought we had the kind of love that could survive anything: distance, late-night phone calls, the occasional argument about my never-ending trips. Maybe I was just too trusting. A few months ago, I noticed the subtle shifts in her behavior. It was the way her eyes flicked away from mine during conversations, or how her phone was always face down on the table. I chalked it up to stress. She'd been pulling a lot of night shifts at the hospital, trying to save up for a trip to Italy she'd been dreaming about. That night, the night everything fell apart, I was stuck in a hotel conference room 1,000 miles away. It was past midnight when I finally got back to my room. I stared at the blinking voicemail notification on my phone, hoping it was Sara calling to say she missed me. Instead, it was the credit card company. Someone had just charged a $70 Uber ride to our account, a route that started at the hospital where Sara worked and ended nowhere near our house. I frowned at the timestamp. Her shift should have ended hours ago. My fingers hovered over the call button, but something stopped me. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband checking up on his wife. So I texted her instead, "Hey, babe. How was your shift?" Her reply came almost instantly, exhausting. "I'm already in bed. Call you in the morning?" I stared at the message until the words blurred together. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling settling in my gut, blaming it on too much coffee and not enough sleep. I threw my phone on the bed, convinced myself I was being ridiculous, and tried to get some rest. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I checked the credit card app again. 2 more charges, both for Uber. One around 1 a.m., another at 1:45. Both starting at the same address where the first ride ended. I typed the address into Google Maps, my hands trembling. It was a nondescript apartment complex on the other side of town. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Maybe she went out for drinks with the girls, I told myself. Maybe her car broke down. 1,000 maybes, all of them piling up until I could barely breathe. I pulled up my call history. She hadn't called me in 3 days. A knock on my hotel door snapped me out of it. I stumbled through the rest of the day, mechanically shaking hands and nodding at presentations, my mind stuck on that apartment complex, on the lies hidden behind Sara's texts. By the time my flight touched down at home, I was running on fumes and too much caffeine. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I parked down the street from our house and stared at the windows, waiting for some sign of life, some clue that would either confirm or destroy everything I thought I knew. Around 8 p.m., Sara's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, looking tired but beautiful, her scrubs wrinkled and hair pulled back in a messy bun. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Then a dark sedan rolled up behind her. An Uber. I watched as the driver, a guy in his early 30s, athletic build, a smile that lingered too long, got out and handed Sara her phone. She laughed at something he said, a sound that used to be mine. They stood there for a moment, too close, before she finally turned and headed inside. The driver leaned against his car, eyes following her until the door closed. He smirked, climbed back into the Uber, and pulled away. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, and tried to remember how to breathe. Maybe there's an explanation, I thought. Maybe I'm overreacting. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I slipped inside quietly, hoping the darkness would mask the storm of emotions clawing at my insides. Sara was in the shower when I got home, and for a moment, I stood outside the bathroom door, listening to the water run and the faint hum of a song she used to sing when she thought no one was listening. The scent of lavender shampoo seeped under the door, the same one I'd bought for her birthday last year. It was a small, stupid detail, but it hit me hard. I stumbled back, made my way to the kitchen, and leaned against the counter, my heart hammering in my chest. I pulled out my phone, swiping through the credit card charges again, each line a fresh punch to the gut. The timestamps were erratic, spanning weeks. I hadn't noticed before, or maybe I hadn't wanted to. When Sara finally emerged, she was wrapped in one of my old t-shirts, hair damp and clinging to her neck. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, and she crossed the room to wrap her arms around my waist, pressing her cheek to my chest like she'd done 1,000 times before. "I missed you," she mumbled, her voice muffled. I swallowed, forcing my arms to encircle her. The words stuck in my throat. "Yeah. Me too." We stood there for a while, the silence stretching between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but none of them made it past my lips. "Are you hungry?" she asked finally, pulling back and looking up at me. Her eyes were wide, earnest, or maybe I just wanted to believe they were. "Nah," I said, my voice rough. "Just tired." She hesitated, chewing on her bottom lip like she always did when she was nervous. "Okay. I'll warm something up if you change your mind." I watched her move around the kitchen, pulling out plates and setting them on the counter, her movements careful and precise. My eyes traced the curve of her neck, the faint red mark near her collarbone that hadn't been there before. I tore my gaze away, my hands clenching into fists. I spent the next day buried in work, trying to keep my mind off of Sara and the Uber driver and all the things I didn't want to believe. But the questions gnawed at me, relentless and unyielding. By lunchtime, I was scrolling through her Instagram, looking for clues, a new friend, a photo I hadn't seen before. Nothing. Just pictures of us from our last trip to the coast, of sunsets and coffee mugs and the stray cat she'd been feeding for months. I was about to give up when a new notification popped up. A comment on her most recent post, a picture of our front porch bathed in golden light. "That view's amazing. Hope I get to see it again soon." No username, just a string of random numbers. But my blood ran cold. I clicked the profile, fingers trembling, and found nothing but a single picture, a dark sedan parked in front of a red brick apartment building. No bio, no name. Just that. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, every nerve in my body screaming at me to do something. I copied the profile link, sent it to my own phone, and closed the app, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. That night, I got home early, determined to end the torment one way or another. But the house was empty, the lights off, Sara's car nowhere in sight. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. I paced the living room, my pulse roaring in my ears. Minutes dragged into hours, and still no sign of her. Around midnight, headlights flashed through the curtains, and I froze. I peeked out, my breath catching when I saw the dark sedan parked in our driveway. The same one from the Instagram profile picture. Sara stepped out first, her hair tousled, laughter spilling from her lips. The driver came next, eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He leaned in, whispered something that made her blush and swatted his arm. She hesitated by the car door, biting her lip, before finally reaching out to squeeze his hand. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over the lamp behind me. My chest felt hollow, the air too thick to breathe. I backed into the hallway, desperate to escape, but my foot caught on the corner of the rug, and I went crashing to the floor, pain flaring up my wrist. The front door creaked open. "Aaron?" Sara's voice was soft, hesitant. I scrambled to my feet, barely making it to the kitchen before she rounded the corner. I plastered on a smile, hoping she wouldn't notice the way my hands shook. "Hey," I managed, my voice strained. "Didn't hear you come in." She blinked, eyes darting over my shoulder towards the dark hallway. "I thought you were working late. Got off early." She bit her lip, a flicker of guilt passing through her eyes. "Oh. I was out with some of the girls from work. Dinner, you know." I nodded, the lie twisting between us, rancid and bitter. "Right. Sounds fun." "Yeah." Her voice was too bright, too forced. She took a step closer, resting a hand on my chest. "You're tense. Rough day?" I swallowed, the weight of her touch both comforting and repulsive. "Something like that." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe I can help with that." Her fingers trailed up, curling around the back of my neck, pulling me down into a kiss that tasted like guilt and desperation. I let her. Because I was too afraid to let go. The kiss was supposed to feel like home. Instead, it was cold, unfamiliar, like kissing a stranger who wore my wife's face. I pulled back first, trying to mask the revulsion twisting my gut. Sarah's eyes searched mine, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her carefully constructed smile. "You okay?" she asked, her voice small. "Just tired," I muttered, stepping back. Her hand slipped from my neck, fingers brushing my chest before falling to her side. I couldn't bring myself to meet her eyes, afraid of what I'd see. Or worse, what I wouldn't. She hovered in the kitchen, watching me with a mix of guilt and something else I couldn't name. I busied myself with pouring a glass of water, focusing on the way the liquid swirled, anything but the silence between us. "I was thinking we could do something this weekend," she tried again, her voice soft. "Maybe go to that new Italian place you like?" I gripped the glass tighter. Italian was my favorite, not hers. Sara hated red sauce, always picked at her food whenever we went. She was trying. Or pretending to. I wasn't sure which was worse. "Sure," I mumbled. "Sounds good." Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Great. I'll make reservations." She hesitated, glancing at me with eyes too wide, too innocent. "I love you, Aaron." I forced a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Love you too." The words tasted like ash. I barely slept that night. I lay on my side, watching the ceiling fan turn slow circles above our bed, each creak a reminder that Sara was only inches away, curled up beneath the same blanket, her breathing soft and even. I tried to match my breaths to hers, tried to convince myself that the warmth of her back against mine was enough. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. The way she'd leaned into him, that laugh that used to be mine. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called in sick to work and spent the day in my car, parked across the street from the hospital. Sarah's shift started at 7 a.m. sharp. I watched the staff entrance, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel, nerves raw and frayed. She emerged around 3 p.m., her hair pulled back, eyes tired but alert. My breath caught as I watched her pause by the curb, phone in hand. Moments later, a dark sedan rolled up. The same one. The driver leaned over, pushing the door open, and Sara slid in without a moment's hesitation. My grip on the wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. I forced myself to wait, count to 10 before pulling into traffic, keeping a few cars between us. They drove for almost 20 minutes, weaving through side streets before stopping at a small coffee shop tucked between a laundromat and a thrift store. I parked a block away, the engine still running, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But I couldn't. I watched through the windshield as they stepped inside, Sara brushing her hair behind her ear, laughing at something he said. The driver, tall, athletic, dark hair cropped close, grinned, resting a hand on her lower back as he held the door. I recognized that touch. I'd done the same 1,000 times before. A fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. I leaned forward, elbows braced against the steering wheel, sucking in deep breaths. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, Sarah's name lighting up the screen. "Hey, love. Sorry, I'm working late again. Shouldn't be more than a few hours." My vision blurred at the edges. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the bile in my throat to settle. The worst part wasn't that she was lying. It was how easily the lie slipped from her fingers, how practiced it sounded. Like she'd done it 100 times before. They stayed inside for nearly an hour. I stared at the entrance, fingers digging into the leather of the steering wheel, heart slamming against my ribs. When they finally emerged, she was holding a to-go cup, cheeks flushed, eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in months. He opened the door for her again, that easy smile never faltering. They talked for a moment, too close, Sara biting her lip and glancing down at the ground like a nervous schoolgirl. Then he reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, fingers lingering just a moment too long. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull back. She smiled. I tasted copper, realizing I'd bitten through my lip. I forced myself to stay still, white-knuckled and shaking, watching as they pulled out of the lot. I followed at a distance, heart pounding in my ears, vision narrowing until all I could see was the damn sedan and the way her silhouette leaned towards him in the passenger seat. They stopped at the same apartment complex as before, a brick building with chipped paint and a flickering porch light. She hesitated at the door, glancing back at him, fingers toying with the hem of her jacket. He stepped closer, one hand cupping her cheek, and kissed her. Slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. She didn't pull away. I cracked the door open, stumbling out of the car, legs weak and unsteady. The world spun, headlights blurring into white streaks, the pavement tilting beneath my feet. I leaned against the hood, gasping for air, while rising in my throat. For a moment, I thought I might actually pass out. When I looked up, they were gone. The door swung shut behind them, leaving nothing but silence and the faint glow of the porch light. I didn't remember driving home. Didn't remember unlocking the door, or collapsing onto the couch, or the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking no matter how hard I clenched them. I stared at the photos on the mantel, vacations, weddings, anniversaries, all of them tainted now, every smile a lie. The house felt too quiet, too empty. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sara. Love you. See you soon. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, hands numb, chest hollowed out and raw. I wanted to scream. To smash every picture frame, to punch a hole through the wall, to burn the whole damn house down just to watch it crumble. But I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. I dropped the phone, head falling into my hands, and for the first time in years, I cried. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. I sat in the dark living room, blinds drawn, the silence pressing in from all sides. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. The way she leaned into him, the way she smiled like she hadn't in months, like she'd never smiled for me. Morning came slowly, bleeding gray light through the windows. I forced myself off the couch, limbs heavy, eyes gritty with exhaustion. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, Sarah's name lighting up the screen again. Morning, love. Didn't want to wake you. See you tonight. I stared at the message, 1,000 replies tangling in my throat. I wanted to ask where she'd been last night, why she hadn't come home until nearly dawn. I wanted to scream, to break something, to drive to that apartment complex and demand the truth. Instead, I tossed the phone aside and stumbled into the shower, scalding water beating against my back. I scrubbed until my skin was raw, until the steam blurred the edges of the room and I couldn't tell if the wetness on my face was from the water or the tears I couldn't seem to stop. By the time Sara got home that evening, I was back on the couch, same spot as before, hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. I watched through the window as she pulled into the driveway, the familiar shape of her car almost mocking. She stepped out, adjusting her purse, brushing invisible creases from her scrubs like she was trying to erase every trace of him. The door opened, soft footsteps padding down the hallway. I forced myself to stay still, each breath shallow and ragged. Hey, she called, voice bright, too bright. You home? I cleared my throat, trying to force the words past the lump in my chest. Yeah. Living room. She appeared a moment later, smile stretching wide. But it faltered when she saw my face, eyes flicking over the dark circles, the stiffness in my shoulders. You okay? She asked, frowning. Long day. My voice came out flat, empty. Yours? She hesitated, fingers tightening on her purse strap. Same. Nothing exciting. The lie twisted between us, heavy and suffocating. I stared at her, waiting for something, an apology, an explanation, anything. But she just stood there, eyes darting to the window, shoulders tensing under my gaze. She shifted, clearing her throat. I'm just gonna change real quick, she mumbled, already backing down the hallway. I watched her go, the anger simmering beneath my ribs, hot and acidic. I dragged a hand over my face, nails digging into my scalp, trying to ground myself in anything but the image of her in his arms. Dinner was torture. We ate in silence, forks scraping over plates, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of silverware. I picked at my pasta, appetite gone, watching her from across the table. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on her plate, shoulders hunched, fingers tapping a restless rhythm against the table. I couldn't take it anymore. So who is he? I asked abruptly, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Sara froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Her eyes shot up, wide and startled, a rabbit caught in headlights. What? She stammered, voice cracking. I set my fork down slowly, hands steady even as my pulse roared in my ears. The guy you've been sneaking around with, I clarified, each word clipped in cold. The one with the dark sedan. Who is he? Her face drained of color, lips parting on a shaky breath. For a moment, she just stared at me, eyes glassy, panic flaring in their depths. Aaron, she started, voice trembling. Don't, I snapped, the word sharp enough to make her flinch. I leaned forward, elbows braced on the table, every muscle coiled tight. Don't lie to me, Sara. Not again. She swallowed, throat bobbing, fingers twisting in her napkin. I wasn't, it's not what you think. Don't, I growled. I saw you. Her breath hitched, eyes glistening. Please, just let me. How long? I demanded, voice rising. How long has this been going on? She crumpled, shoulders shaking, hands coming up to cover her mouth. For a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, barely more than a whisper. 4 months. The words punched the air from my lungs. I fell back against the chair, head spinning, fingers digging into the armrests. 4 months. Almost half a year. While I'd been gone, calling every night, sending texts she sometimes didn't even bother to answer. While I'd been laying alone in hotel beds, staring at the ceiling and counting down the days until I could come home. I laughed, the sound raw and jagged. Wow, I muttered, scrubbing a hand over my mouth. 4 months. That's impressive. Aaron, please. Don't, I snapped. Just, don't. She fell silent, eyes glistening, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. For a moment, neither of us moved, the silence stretching long and suffocating. Was it worth it? I asked finally, voice hollow. Was he worth it? She choked on a sob, hands trembling. I never meant, I didn't want. But you did. The words came out cold, final. You did. Her face crumpled, a broken sound slipping past her lips. She reached out, fingers brushing mine, desperate and pleading. Please, she whimpered. I love you. I do, I just. I jerked back, her touch burning, bile rising in my throat. Don't, I hissed. Don't you dare. She broke then, sobs racking her frame, shoulders hunched in defeat. I watched her crumble, watched the tears fall, but all I could feel was numb. Hollowed out. Like she'd reached inside my chest and ripped my heart clean out, leaving nothing but ashes behind. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor, the sound harsh and grating. I stumbled to my feet, each breath a knife to the lungs, fingers clumsy as I grabbed my keys off the counter. Aaron, wait, Sara's voice broke, raw and desperate. But I didn't. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I was out the door and in the car before she could catch me, the tires screeching as I pulled out of the driveway, headlights carving through the dark. I didn't know where I was going, just away. As far away from her as I could get. I drove aimlessly for hours, headlights cutting through the dark, each mile putting more distance between me and the shattered remains of my life. The city blurred past, neon signs and traffic lights bleeding together until I couldn't tell one street from the next. I barely registered the gaslight blinking on the dashboard, too numb to care. Eventually, I pulled into an empty lot behind a 24-hour diner, engine ticking in the silence. My hands stayed on the wheel, knuckles white, fingers trembling. I stared at the cracked asphalt, at the weeds growing through the concrete, but all I could see was her face, tear-streaked and crumbling, eyes wide and desperate. She was probably calling me right now. My phone buzzed from the passenger seat, Sara's name lighting up the screen, the vibrations a low, angry hum in the quiet. I let it ring. When it finally fell silent, I slumped back, head hitting the seat, eyes burning. I tried to breathe, each inhale scraping raw through my throat, but it felt like my chest was caving in. Like someone had punched a hole straight through my ribs, left me hollow and bleeding. I didn't move for a long time. The sun was peeking over the horizon by the time I made it back to the house. The light was soft, hesitant, painting the sky in muted grays and pinks. My limbs felt heavy, every step an effort, exhaustion dragging at my bones. Her car was still in the driveway. I stared at it for a moment, at the way it was parked slightly crooked, as if she'd barely been holding it together when she pulled in. I tore my eyes away, fingers curling around the strap of my duffel bag, the one I'd bought on a trip to Denver last year. The one I'd packed hastily in the diner parking lot, hands shaking so bad I'd dropped the keys twice. The house was dark and silent when I stepped inside, the curtains drawn, the air heavy with the scent of lavender and something else, something stale, cloying, like the last breath of a funeral bouquet. I paused in the entryway, bag hanging from my shoulder, heart slamming against my ribs. For a moment, I almost turned back. Almost dropped the bag, marched upstairs, and shook her awake just to see the guilt in her eyes, just to hear her stumble through another excuse, another lie. But I couldn't. I made it halfway to the door when a soft creak broke the silence. I turned, muscles locking, breath catching in my throat. Sara stood at the top of the stairs, eyes puffy and red, hair tangled and wild around her shoulders. She wore one of my old t-shirts, the one she always stole to sleep in, sleeves hanging past her fingertips. For a moment, neither of us moved, the silence stretching between us, brittle and suffocating. Her eyes flicked to the duffel bag, and her breath hitched, shoulders tensing. "Aaron," she whispered, voice small and broken. I forced myself to meet her eyes, fingers clenching tight around the strap. "I can't," I rasped, each word a knife to the throat. "I can't do this." She took a shaky step forward, bare feet whispering over the carpet, hands trembling. "Please," she begged, voice cracking. "Please, just let me explain." "I saw you," I snapped, the words raw and jagged. "I saw you with him. I watched you kiss him. What more is there to explain?" Her face crumpled, a sob slipping past her lips. "It wasn't, I didn't." "Don't," I growled, taking a step back. "Just, don't." She broke then, hands flying up to cover her mouth, shoulders curling in on themselves. The sound of her sobs tore through the air, sharp and splintered, each one a fresh wound, raw and festering. I stared at her, at the girl I'd loved since college, the girl I'd married in a courthouse with nothing but her sister as a witness and tulips in her hair. I'd never seen her look so small. And for a moment, a brief, traitorous moment, I wanted to drop the bag, to pull her into my arms and kiss the pain away, to forgive her just so I didn't have to see that look in her eyes. But then I remembered the dark sedan, the way she'd leaned into him, smiled for him. The way she'd come home smelling like his cologne, slid under our sheets, and whispered, "I love you," like it wasn't a lie. And the fury came rushing back, hot and all-consuming. I took a step back, 1 foot over the threshold, fingers tightening on the door handle. Her eyes widened, panic flaring. "Aaron, please," she choked, stumbling down the stairs, arms outstretched. "Please, don't go. I made a mistake, I know, but I love you." I laughed then, the sound brittle and hollow. "Love me?" I repeated, voice shaking. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have been sneaking around for months. If you loved me, you would have told me the truth." I was scared, she whimpered. "I didn't want to lose you." "Well," I muttered, the door swinging open behind me, cool morning air spilling in. "You did." Her face crumpled, hands flying to her mouth, a strangled sound escaping her throat. I took another step back, the sunlight warm on my shoulders, the driveway stretching empty behind me. She moved, fingers curling around my sleeve, eyes wild and desperate. "Please," she sobbed, voice raw. "Please, don't leave me. I'll do anything, I'll cut him off, I'll." "You already did," I cut in, voice flat. "The moment you kissed him. The moment you lied to my face." Her grip slackened, eyes dull and empty, shoulders crumbling. For a moment, I just stared at her, at the girl I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, the girl I'd built everything around. But that girl was gone, buried beneath months of lies and stolen kisses. I pulled my arm free, her fingers slipping away, cold air biting at the exposed skin. I stepped back, heel scraping against the pavement, each breath a struggle, each step a fresh wound. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The door swung shut behind me, muffling her sobs, leaving nothing but silence and the sound of my own breathing, ragged and shallow. I made it to the car, duffel bag thrown in the back seat, hands trembling on the wheel. When the engine rumbled to life, I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched so hard it ached. I pulled out of the driveway, tires crunching over asphalt, eyes stinging and throat raw. I didn't know where I was going. Didn't care. As long as it was far enough to drown out the sound of her sobs, the guilt in her eyes, the echo of I love you that tasted like ashes on my tongue. So I drove. And I didn't look back.